What do you think? Which one's weird to you? This one?
No.
I think it'll be fine.
Okay.
This is fine.
Yep.
Please take a seat, silence your cell phones, the voices. Welcome to today's senior speeches. We ask that you all please silence your cell phones before the event to honor today's speakers. Our first speaker today is Jeffrey McAtee. Jeffrey will be introduced by his brother, Andrew.
Hello, everyone. Honored to be up here introducing Jeffrey, and I thought the best way to do it was truth and a lie. So let's begin. Swimming is not an area of athletic expertise because he also played basketball in middle school. A couple of months ago, Jeffrey left the back door wide open in the morning when he was leaving, which gave our cat Drizzle the perfect opportunity to slip outside, where she spent the next 14 hours under our porch. And Jeffrey has a deep appreciation for rap and hip hop music, and his favorite artists are Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. All right, so believe it or not, Jeffrey was once a hooper. He was on the team in 6th grade. Yeah. And he was a member of the 2nd grade for like 15 minutes. And then he decided And so one morning in November, when he was leaving for swim, he held the door open, saying goodbye to my mom, and just slipped out undetected somehow. So yeah. And then, so I was lying about rap, obviously. Because every time I get in his car, he's playing like a new song I've never heard of from a genre that I've never heard of before. So yeah. But one last thing, I just want to say that I'm very proud of all your accomplishments and that I'm very proud to be your brother. So without further ado, Jeffrey McAtee.
I one day hope Andrew has an appreciation for indie pop like I do, but he's gonna stick to rap, it seems like. So, okay. All right. Buckle in, this is kind of long. Okay. Collegiate has truly ruined me forever. Attending collegiate is like only using the express lane at amusement parks. After years of skipping the line, it becomes dreadful to imagine yourself having to wait 2 hours for a 3-minute roller coaster. This is the predicament collegiate has created in my impressionable mind. I couldn't imagine myself going to any other institution, not now or in the future, unless it truly lives up to the expectations that were created throughout my time here. You see, we go to a school that is well known in the city and even the state and chocolate mousse. But no, it's not just our extravagant dining selection that makes collegiate so amazing. When I came to this school in 2019, it was my first time ever attending a non-religious place of learning. And I was particularly excited to finally receive schooling where education was education, and a stark contrast from where religion was school and Jeffrey was tired. I had heard good things about the new environment I would be entering, but there was nothing that could have prepared me for how special and unique this place is. After enduring and experiencing Collegiate's upper school for 4 long years, I wanted to share several encounters and observations that have left me nourished, yet distraught, as I struggle with the reality of being kicked out of here in June, or as others call graduating. This school has taught me how to be a mini leader, even though I'm just a child. On typical Mondays, I come to school and it feels like I have to work a grueling shift in the hot sun at Audubon Country Club in the peak of summer, after already swimming for 2.5 hours in an 84-degree pool. Allow me to set the scene. Recovering from a failed battle with my confused circadian rhythm, I start morning announcements, usually without my counterpart, Amber. Mourning the repeated loss of whom I once believed to be my strong student body president. I walk to my grave next to Tory Hill in American history. After leading discussion, usually, I make my way to an advisory where everyone is deep in conversation about real-world issues. Just kidding. Then I head to Spanish, where I speak about 5 words in the language. But then we read a whole ancient work of poetry, and I only understand its title. I then clear my mind in yearbook club, where I'm technically the leader, but I mostly just watch the sophomores do all the work. Now the day is halfway over, and I still have to survive my English class filled with juniors and David Kaplan, lead the Senate during lunch, and experience all 5 stages of grief in Mr. Stern's classroom. Although my Monday sounds rough, I know everyone in the crowd has an equally packed day from time to time, and for that, give yourself credit. This school is hard, and legend has it that college is actually easier than this college preparatory school, especially for those who take on several leadership roles like me. If my future school cannot simulate what I believe to represent snippets from the real world, count me out. Collegiate is probably the only school that any of us will ever go to where it is socially acceptable to leave all of your belongings behind while you run across school to use the private bathroom or to check in with your favorite teacher about something overly personal. On a daily basis, I see someone leave behind the whole entire Apple ecosystem. I mean everything, MacBook, iPad, iPhone, AirPod Pros, and an Apple Watch, as if that needs to be removed. This site is completely normal, as the honor code has bound us to a school day surrounded with trust. I know the honor code cannot be applied to normal life, but collegiate is not normal. If I can't leave my shimmering MacBook sitting innocently in a college's library, count me out. I have become an incredible actor or even impersonator thanks to Mr. Travis. For those who have not yet been affected by Mr. Travis's non-traditional way of learning our world's history, I will try my best to explain and shed light on this subject. Just this past year, I have role-played as many different people. Most recently, I was a journeyman shoemaker from New York in the 1800s, but I could never forget the previous aliases assigned to me. I was a moderate landowner of 300 acres in Queens, New York, the civil rights activist and author, James Baldwin, the owner of a factory during and after the Market Revolution, Dorothea Dix on a date, a woman in her mid-20s in the 1920s, a radical Republican after the Civil War, a traditional Japanese artist, and several more. Thank you, Mr. Travis, for placing me in the shoes of many figures throughout our world's history. Although I have not received a great grade on any of these assignments, you have raised the bar for every history class I may take in my future, and you have helped me to establish purely out of the fear of your wrath. If there is no live-action role-playing, count me out. Mr. Stern, I have been forever altered from the 3 classes I have taken with you. Many of you have not and will never take a class with Mr. Stern. Don't feel too bad about that. You may have potentially avoided a harsh rewiring of your brain. Before I took a class with Mr. Stern, I had an innocent love for the subject of math. I did measly algebra with a smile on my face, and I looked forward to playing Survivor at the end of each unit. Math, however, took on a new meaning as I embarked on my junior year and quickly learned that math is more comparable to guerrilla warfare than the science and study of quality, structure, space, and change. I won't go into the specifics about the wars I battled during my junior year inside of Mr. Stern's classroom while taking AP Stats and his barely legal accelerated pre-cal, but I am forever grateful for Mr. Stern and the experience I acquired. In the end, he taught me how to love math. It just required a lot of pain before we could see eye to eye as math teacher and student, rather than the oppressor and the oppressed. In hindsight, he has raised the bar for any future math class I might take. Thank you, Mr. Stern. If my future teachers don't make me question my sanity, count me out. We love you, Mr. Stern. I see you back there. Sorry. Okay, next. The opportunity to form unique and beneficial relationships here is top tier. For example, my advisory, which was once a random assortment of 14-year-old children being led by a strange man, has blossomed into a strong and powerful group of leaders. Thanks to our fearless leader, Ms. Crawford. I never thought a school-sanctioned group of people could fit so nicely together, like pieces of a puzzle, where we form an impressionist painting and Ms. Crawford is Claude Monet. I can tell this group of people anything, and I often tell them too much. My advisor, Ms. Crawford, has taken on the role of a part-time therapist, mentor, entertainer, mediator, judge, and friend. Sure, you can find a favorite faculty member at any school, but the environment here is just so different from any other. For this reason, I experience FOMO when I cannot go to school. I don't know how relatable this sentiment is, but I never thought there could be a school where you could actually sit in your bed with a deadly virus and feel left out. I mean, imagine how many people in Mama Page's office that you can miss out on. The environment at our school is the sole reason I get out of bed, never miss a day, and even push myself in the classroom. I know that I have many friends and faculty that will have my back in the future, and I may even invite some of them to join my future pyramid schemes. If Mama Page and Miss Crawford cannot be at my next school, count me out. I will have an extremely hard time moving on from this place. My expectations on what school is supposed to be like can never be lowered. I mean, if I don't have a teacher that trusts me to water her tedious and extensive magical garden for a whole week, I don't know what I'll do. I need to be able to say hola to Mr. Rucker, hello to Senor Ojeda, and ugh to Mama Page each morning, or my day will be worsened. Even the little things will be hard to leave behind as well, like Veracross, the science room desks that show my sweat, and the wooden tables that adhere to papers, my parking spot at Gilda's riddled with future sinkholes, and having my blood pressure elevated driving on Bardstown Road every day. As I've begun to cope with the impending close of high school, I've had to work on centering myself in the current moment. After getting into college last month, I wished for time to accelerate due to the excitement for my newly discovered future. But then I realized the unknown is horrifying, and I need to be content with where I am now. Can any college outdo? The thought of college sounds great, but pizza day and cutting the line on Mondays only, I promise, is great too. Cherish each minute because time is a thief and time cannot be bought. So for all the underclassmen listening, make your next year's worth it. Join clubs and inherit leadership roles, and maybe even overload your schedule and develop an anxiety disorder. But most importantly, be grateful for what you were offered here. Collegiate's tuition is up in the sky and only getting higher, so take every advantage of every opportunity possible. Okay, it's true. This place is what you make it, so make it yours and make it amazing. Thank you.
Our second speaker today is Sophie O'Driscoll. Sophie will be introduced by Ms. Prince.
Good morning. I have an amazing advisory right behind Ms. Crawford's. And my advisory is amazing because they have beautiful minds and unbelievable hearts, which creates really strong personalities. And sometimes in strong personalities, it's hard to be heard. But there's one person in our advisory who's always heard, and that is Sophie. When she speaks in a couple minutes, I want to make sure you know to tune into her as well. So here are 5 reasons you need to listen carefully to everything Sophie O'Driscoll says. First of all, she's wicked smart, and she will teach you things you didn't even know you wanted to know. For example, in her 9th grade year, she taught me all of the fingernail shapes. There is stiletto, almond, square, oval, and my favorite, squoval. At the beginning of this year, she reviewed for me all of the important knots one must know to survive in the wilderness. Trucker's hitch, taut line hitch, clover hitch, square knot, figure 8, and end line bowline. She also, and I appreciated this, just last week, helped me understand the intricacies of Chinese grammar and verb forms, or lack thereof. She and David got into an in-depth conversation, and Sophie won. Also, Sophie is a good friend, and Sophie's a good friend because she's a protector. Some people don't know, think that Sophie's force of conviction is intimidating, but the reality is that Sophie is simply always willing to speak truth to power. She'll speak about women's rights, the rights of underrepresented people. She'll speak about the right to protect your mental health and well-being, and she'll speak about the right to be yourself and not something that anybody else tells you you should be. She's also a truth teller, which makes her funny. Gilda Radner said humor is truth, only faster. It's hysterical. But you have to listen close and think fast to catch it. Sophie's humor is only truth on rapid fire. Number 2, Sophie has secret skills that she doesn't even know are amazing. Just yesterday, I learned that Sophie can tell you any word backwards in only seconds. Sophie, how do you say Molly Prince backwards? It's like that. We didn't practice that, by the way. And lastly, Sophie will inspire you. By her example in her everyday actions, Sophie will inspire you to be strong when times are hard, to not just remain calm when life gets chaotic, but actually to laugh in life's face. And lastly, Sophie will inspire you to slay always. Without further ado, I give you the wicked smart, rapid fire funny, and always slaying Sophie O.
You slay too, Miss Prince. Growing up, the one thing I wished for above anything else was a sibling. I didn't mind if I got a brother or sister, as long as I could finally have a second kid in the house. I watched shows like Good Luck Charlie or Jessie, where there was never a dull moment due to the entire pack of kids under one roof, and wished on every star that I could be like Teddy Duncan or Emma Ross, the oldest sister in a chaotic and fun-loving family. Both my parents came from families with 4 kids each, and I simply could not understand why they weren't down to pop out more kids. It doesn't quite work like that. I tortured my poor parents for years, begging for a sibling. I distinctly remember waking up from dreams of having a big family and being absolutely heartbroken when I realized my dreams were not real life. I firmly believed that having a little sister or brother would have absolutely transformed my life. I romanticized even the smallest aspects of siblinghood, from petty fights to being forced to babysit. Even when my friends with little siblings would warn me that it was not all fun and games, I could not be swayed. And I maintain to this day that having an older sister to guide me could have helped me avoid many an embarrassing middle school mistake. However, I have come to appreciate my only childness. First of all, my lack of siblings has allowed me to be the lone sinkhole for all my parents' attention, both emotional and, of course, financial. Not having to share my spotlight offered me the ability to be the sole star of Christmas morning, summer vacations, and basically every day at home. I was mercifully saved from the indignity of having to share my room or my toys. Unfortunately, this led to a very harsh awakening when my cousins would come over and completely disrupt my peace by demanding that I let them play with my stuffed animals, or, God forbid, actually take one home. Despite the harsh reality check my cousins forced upon me from a young age, I am and will forever be exceptionally grateful for them. They became the older sisters I never had, lending me hand-me-downs, chauffeuring me around town, and, most importantly, teaching me life lessons which have proven positively vital. The bond I formed with my older cousins has helped me get through some of the worst times in my life and further enriched some of the best. I consider it to be the only reason I did not, in my opinion, turn out like a stereotypical only child with no sense of how to relate to people my own age. Which brings me to another pro of growing up solo. I've become very comfortable being around and talking to adults, something which has already served me in fostering relationships with teachers and other mentors. From the time I was a toddler on, my parents would drag me along to events with their friends. I never felt uncomfortable having a conversation with an adult, and some of my parents' friends have actually been amazing resources for me in all kinds of ways. Not having a sibling to rely on in adult-heavy situations allowed me to push outside of my comfort zone and to become someone my parents' friends and colleagues would regularly refer to as so mature for my age. Cousins, adults, and attention are all excellent perks of being an only child, but frankly, any of the things I've mentioned pale in comparison to the number one highlight of my childhood, the relationship I have with my parents. For those of you who have had the pleasure of meeting Kim and Connor, you're welcome. My parents are some of the wisest, kindest, and funniest people I know, and they have consistently made me feel like the luckiest child in the world to have been raised by them. From birth, my mom and dad instilled in me a fierce work ethic, a resilience which has gotten me through some really difficult times, and overall, a character I can honestly say I'm proud of. And even though our house may not have been as full as I used to wish it was, there has never been a dull moment in the Boland O'Driscoll household. I've spent hours-long quarantine drives with my mom, which single-handedly kept me sane during spring 2020. Had dozens of late night or early morning heart-to-hearts with my dad, and overall felt extraordinary love from each of them since the day I was born. And now my mother is probably starting to cry. She is, so I'll move on. Being an only child used to be one of my biggest regrets about my life. But as I've said, I've come to recognize the perks that come with it, and I no longer have heart-wrenching dreams about being surprised by a new baby brother or sister. I've also learned a great many lessons from being the only kid in the house. Firstly, it is crucial to be able to enjoy your own company. I now truly value my alone time, and I firmly believe that the only way to be happy is to simply enjoy being with yourself first. Secondly, I learned the importance of true friends. Since I don't have a sibling to hang out with, I have always found it beyond important to make friends who feel like a chosen family, who you can be yourself around, and who basically live at your house and call your parents mom and dad. I've developed a violent adoration for my dogs, as they basically took the place of the little brothers I used to dream about. Similarly to a sibling, I spent years and years of my early childhood begging for a dog. We started with a rescue, a coonhound beagle mix named Hilda, who we adopted when I was about 4 years old. Hilda was not a fan of us. She only lived with us for a few months before my mom finally got tired of trying to manage a dog who peed on carpets out of spite and bit us regularly to establish her dominance. We ended up giving her to a family friend. Hilda, I hope you're doing well, even though you did purposely break our outdoor fireplace while making dead eye contact with my horrified father. Next, we tried out a hamster. What could go wrong with the tiny, furry little critter? Quite a lot, apparently. Lucy the dwarf hamster, despite being given a state-of-the-art cage, a loving family, and all the treats in the world, remained ungrateful. I mean, this was the hamster from hell. Whether permanently scarring my third-grade best friend, biting my dad through his leather motorcycle glove, or taking a chunk out of my step-grandmother, the self-proclaimed hamster whisperer's hand, Lucy was always causing mayhem, but we did not give up. The summer before 5th grade, we decided to adopt a previously trained Labradoodle puppy, and luckily for us, the third time was the charm. In fact, our new puppy, Porter, adjusted so well that 3 years later, we adopted his brother, Pilsner. Dad was in charge of naming them, hence the beer names. Finally, having someone besides my parents in the house was simply life-changing. Besides giving me another activity to fill my time, my dogs have provided me with unconditional love and companionship. Although they aren't human, Porter and Pilsner have become the siblings I never had and have deeply enriched my life. Finally, I want to be grateful for the cards I was dealt and to appreciate even the things about life which may seem unsavory at first. Even though I desperately wanted a big family as a kid, looking back, I wouldn't change anything. I hope all of you, even with siblings, are able to reimagine those things which have plagued you and be grateful for every little positive thing. Thank you.
Our final speaker today is Luke English. Luke will be introduced by his sister, Grace.
It's been about 5 years since I stood up on this stage to do my own senior speech, and I thought I'd never have to stand up here again. But here I am, introducing my own not-so-little brother for his own senior speech. I've spent 18 and a half years dealing with this guy, better known in our household as Doodlebop. Growing up, we had our fights and rivalries, as siblings always do, whether it was about him stealthily raiding my closet, insisting that he takes an hour to cook 5-star meals when he only has 5 minutes, or walking to my room at random times reciting well-known songs, but only in the form of slam poetry, and then proceeding to walk out of my room and not close the door. Despite us butting heads, he's always seemed to attend the same college. Go Colonels. However, it's so frustrating because whether I like it or not, and I really don't want to admit this, but he's become more successful than me at almost everything. I sometimes feel like this kid is driven by pure stubbornness and spite to be better than me. It's honestly infuriating how smart he is. This guy has a 3.8 unweighted GPA at collegiate, where the quality of education's amazing. And he's never gotten lower than a B in any class. Me, meanwhile, getting a B- in Mr. Cern's calculus class and having to take the final to get above that 82.5. Just do it. But he's not just smarter academically. He's always one step ahead of me with the jokes and is always there to point out my flaws and mistakes. But as for athletics, his competitive spirit and talent helped the Titans team become represented at state for the first time in almost a decade, which is far better than any of my contributions to the Amazon tennis team. Even though Luke constantly reminds me of how he's better than me, I'm very proud of the person he's grown up to be. He's become confident, honest, reliable, kind. Is that I really don't have time to say because he's got to get to his speech. The list goes on. Without further ado, my brother, Luke English.
Thank you, Grace, for finally admitting that I am better. If you know me, you know that I have horrible motion sickness. I hate car rides, plain and simple. It doesn't matter if it's a short trip to Target or a 1,000-mile road trip across the country. I still always manage to get sick. I can't watch a movie, read a book, or even look down at my phone without getting sick. As a younger brother, I'm always squished in the back seat, which is quite annoying when you're 6'2". I also hate the little things that make it even worse, like the smell of fast food, the loud blabbing of my mom on a business call, or my sister trying to show me a TikTok I frankly don't care about. There have been countless times when I've vomited and become the center of attention and been utterly embarrassed. I've even been dubbed Pukey Lukey because of this. So today I thought I'd embarrass myself even more and tell you all about some of my greatest moments. Warning, this speech may contain some graphic content, so if you have a soft stomach like me in the car, deal with it. Let me take you back to the summer of 2014. My mom and I are driving back from my Fall City soccer game. We stopped by Subway on the way home to get a sandwich, and I was casually enjoying myself in the back seat. Just as I finished my sandwich, my baggage out of nowhere, a wave of nausea hits me. Moments later, I felt my lunch coming back up. Panicked, I quickly rolled down the window, intent on setting my lunch safely outside. As I moved to lean out the window, my barely digested sandwich comes flowing out of my mouth. However, it did not make it out the window. In fact, it did almost the complete opposite. It landed everywhere except outside. The puke had rebounded off the window right back to me. I looked down to see my uniform, my seat, my shoes covered in an absolutely ungodly amount of puke. This isn't even the worst of it. As I said, I was panicking, and before the window was even down, I plastered it in vomit. It looked like abstract art. So there I was, sitting, covered in barf, in a state of complete bloody murder at me. She was screaming because there was a plastic bag next to me the entire time. It was only later that I found out that the window art had dripped down into the crack in the door, the part where the window goes into the door. Up until the day we sold the car, the faint smell of puke lingered. We even had the door taken apart because the smell was so bad, but no matter what we did, it never went away. There wasn't one time when the smell didn't give me horrendous PTSD. Still smell today. During January of my freshman year, I went on a church ski trip to Clymer, New York. Now, a road trip in a car is brutal for me, but a bus ride is 100 times worse. The trip started off fine, though, and I thought nothing was wrong. I was not going to embarrass myself this time. I was wrong. About 4 hours into the trip, the bus suddenly stopped. Our pastor told us that the bus had broken down and that we would be, quote, chilling in the Shell gas station parking lot for a couple of hours. They then proceeded to pass out dinner. So Shelby Little Luke downed a lot of food, and I mean a grotesque amount of food. Right as I finished my dinner, Pastor Nathan tells everyone it was just a joke, that they were just switching drivers. Such a funny joke, a good-hearted prank. Not to me. There I was, stomach stuffed with Chick-fil-A and 3.5 hours left to drive. For me, this was an absolute disaster as we were about to get to the roads that twisted through the mountains. For anyone else with motion sickness, you know that this is a death sentence. 30 minutes had passed and I felt like complete crap. I had a headache and my stomach was rolling. Then just like that, I felt it. Yep, you guessed it, my dinner making its second grand appearance. Now this bus is one of the buses that had a tiny little bathroom in the back, so when I started to feel sick, I ran to the back, passing by a group of about 15 St. X seniors. I made it to the bathroom and shut the door behind me, but turned to the toilet. I barfed right onto my pants, the only pair of pants I had with me on the bus. After about 5 minutes of everyone knocking on the door, asking if I was okay, and my refusal to even make a sound, I finally opened the door. There I was, frozen in fear and embarrassment as everyone looked at me in utter disgust. I can still remember how some of the kids were laughing so hard they cried. Others looked horrified. Some looked at me like, what in the world was wrong with this kid? Needless to say, it was a humiliating experience. For the remainder of the trip, I had to sit with a towel wrapped around my waist instead of wearing pants. My last story goes back to the winter of 2014. After school one day, I was surprised with tickets to a UK basketball game, tickets in the row right behind the UK team's bench. I wouldn't be able to see a thing over the 7-foot players, but I didn't care. Now, if you know me, you know I am a UK superfan. To 10-year-old me, this was the absolute best thing in the entire world. I lost my mind in excitement as any kid would. My dad and I drove to Lexington, and as usual, I began to feel carsick, but I wouldn't let anything stop me from watching my boys in blue play. So, like any stubborn kid, I refused to tell my dad that I was sick, out of fear of him not letting us go. So we arrived at Rep Arena, and then it hit. Motion sickness I had been suppressing for 2.5 hours finally reared its ugly head. I ran down to the aisle to the trash can nearest me, the one inside the player tunnel. There I was, spewing chunks into a trash can, and to my horror, I heard the players start to come out from the tunnel, the very tunnel I was standing in yakking. I panicked and looked up, and to my 10-year-old self's horror, I made direct eye contact with Julius Randle, the future NBA All-Star. It was the epitome of embarrassment and the end of the world as I knew it. I quickly wiped my face with my sleeve and stuck my hand out to get their coveted high fives. I still managed to get the high fives from every single one of the players, even with my vomit-ridden sleeve. With a completely red face, I walked back to my seat where my dad sat. He, of course, was laughing hysterically, like any good father should. From all my downright disgusting experiences, I've taken away a valuable life skill. I've become more confident and able to laugh at myself. I mean, I just told all of you some of my most embarrassing experiences. I think that's an ability every person here should have. You shouldn't take yourself too seriously. In life, everyone has their curses, some vomit-related, some not. And instead of getting angry or upset at them, just laugh. Finding humor in situations can be vital for your ability to cope with adversity. It can make it easier for you to deal with difficulties in life. Even though you may not have the unfortunate tendency to spew chunks like me, don't be embarrassed by who you are. Instead, be confident. Life is a lot like car sickness. Horrible. But when times get stressful, don't panic. Just laugh, because things have a tendency to work out in the end. Thank you.
Let's have another round of applause.